Ladies and gents, welcome back. Another impromptu live stream. These things are becoming more and more regular as the weeks go by, and I end up getting a chance to talk to so many really interesting people, and it's really been a blessing, a real privilege that I've been given with a lot of people reaching out to me and saying, "Hey, I have a story," or people that I wanted to reach out to and saying, "Hey, I'd really like to hear from you." And my son's trying to walk in. Now you gotta go, dude. You gotta go. Sorry. No. Get in. Get in the house. Gotta go in the house, man. Oh, this is always a negotiation when this happens. Anyway, we'll play it by ear, see how it goes here. But I've been very, very fortunate in my career here on YouTube in being able to reach out to people and have people come in and enjoy company. I'm getting the company of my son here as I forgot to lock the door. So I'm might as well just jump into this real quick. Tonight I have Nicholas Coleman on. Nick Coleman is joining me tonight to talk about the economics of. Oh, I got my daughter in here. Can you guys get in the house? I'm live right now, and we're gonna be getting going. Yeah, that's great. Okay, can you guys go? Thank you so much, sweetie. Sometimes you just forget to lock the door, and that happens. This is the the way it goes when you go live. Anyway, Nick Coleman is joining me tonight, and well, sorry about that intro. I just flubbed the whole thing.
That's great.
I messed it right up. But yeah, I guess I don't have to introduce myself as a family man now to you. I can.
Yep.
I guess that's
Self-explanatory.
pretty apparent there. But can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Nick?
I am. I'm an economist, and I do some work for personal injury lawyers and defense lawyers regarding personal injury cases and lost income streams. And I'm missing curling tonight to talk to you.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that. Curling sounds like fun. Great Canadian sport.
That's right.
Okay, before we get into the idea of the no fault insurance scheme that they have in British Columbia, we talked to Wes Musio. The fans of the channel are familiar with what we talked about then. But what does an economist do in the world of insurance and adjustments or claims, that kind of thing? What is the focus of an economist in that realm?
Well, when you have a tort insurance system where you can sue for damages, one head of damages is economic damages. So if you lose earnings, or if you need a form of care to get you through the rest of your life or to get you back on track, an economist generally will put that need into present value dollars so that you can be paid out a lump sum, separate yourself from the insurance company, and continue with rehabilitation and trying to get your life back on track.
So your job is to assess what people's injuries essentially are worth long term and what it would cost them. I just want to make sure I get this right, because it's important moving forward that I understand the gist of everything. Now, I'm a big fan of economics, and the channel is no stranger to that concept. I like diving into economics, but when it comes to like the greater economy and things like that, and from my perspective, I didn't actually know that there was a real world application for the use of an economist, right? I always just thought of it in the sense of academia or political theory, stuff like that. But I find it really interesting that there's actual real world application for it. Now, how did you get?
It's definitely a niche market.
It sounds like it. Sounds like it. It's really interesting to me. A lot of people get bored when I start talking economics and stuff, but it's really fascinating to me. Probably because like I really like systems, and when systems come into play, it's really interesting for me. And economics is no stranger to that. It's a bit of a philosophical approach on how people act and why they act and incentives and all of that. And I find it really, really interesting.
Absolutely.
So how did you get on board with guys like Wes and the insurance game?
I was thinking of becoming an actuary out of high school, and I've hooked up with a fellow in an economist who did this line of work, and it appealed to me because felt like you're doing something to help people, right? Whereas an actuary, it seemed like you were in the back room, never see any results, just working away on your computer with lots of numbers. So I've been at it for 21 years. We work for lawyers. The lawyers will hire us, and we do our valuation, and the lawyers will put that in front of the court, and the court will decide what a fair compensation is in a given claim.
Right. And then that brings us into this new scheme, right? So in a tort system,
Right.
I understand a tort system to be a system where, if there's an incident, you would sue the other person who's at fault in that situation. And then whatever adjudication comes from that, claims are or awards are given. That's as much as I understand of it, essentially. And that's a fair assessment.
That's basically right. I mean, plaintiffs will negotiate with the insurer, and if they can't come to an agreement, they go to court, and an agreement will be made for them.
Right. So in 2020, the NDP government came up with a completely different design, a new idea, because they kept losing money because they're the Crown Corporation that runs all the insurance scheme. And instead of admitting defeat that it was not a good system, they said, "Hey, we're gonna take more power." Anyway, fill the audience in on how this all played out.
I actually have to take issue with what you said there, because actually, ICBC was running pretty nicely for a number of years, and it's almost like they created a problem because it wasn't making enough money for them. So I don't know if you're familiar, but when the BC Liberals were in power, they would take ICBC profits and put it into the general coffer.
Okay. So it didn't stay in the corporation. It didn't stay for paying for insurance. It wasn't like a fund that they would actually pay out insurance with.
Exactly. And I think I have a graph, if you don't mind showing it, that's called ICBC net income from insurance operations.
Yeah, that's this one here.
Yeah. So this is in millions of dollars, and it goes all the way back to 2010. And you can see that from 2010 to 2014, things are actually pretty good.
It was in the millions of dollars, just under $500 million surplus in the corporation.
That's right.
Here.
Yeah. And then things in the next 3 years, 15, 16, and 17, they obviously turn around. They're starting to lose money.
Like considerably the other way.
Yeah. It's not crazy though, right? So insurance is going to be cyclical. If you have a heavy crash year,
you're
going to pay out more claims, right?
Yeah, because I'm looking at this at above $150 million in the hole here.
So right before that, the NDP came to power.
So just before all this happened.
No. In 2017.
Oh, okay.
So right before the two big loss years.
So right in the middle here.
Yeah. The NDP came to power, and ICBC reported two huge losses. Back-to-back years of huge losses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is when they started bringing in different measures to try and mitigate ICBC's losses.
Okay.
Which is fair. And I think Wes was saying that the trial lawyers fought some of those, won some of those. They were deemed unconstitutional. And then the result of all this was that they brought in no fault insurance.
Right.
And they did that. They announced it right before that small profit of 50 million or so.
Just right before this happened. So like maybe halfway through the
Right.
year.
Yeah. And they announced it. It took a year to happen. And in that year, they'd already had this $1,500 million profit year.
So a massive turnaround
ICBC made that money, right, without any impact of no fault insurance having actually gone to the books.
Wait. So it hadn't
Yeah.
even taken effect, and it had already remedied.
That's right. So I believe West was saying, that they didn't wait to see how the impact of one of them was the small injury cap,
right,
would play
I
out.
recall that.
Right.
Yeah.
So
but just to refresh the audience, the small injury cap was basically saying that your pain and suffering, things like that, you could only go to a certain amount. You couldn't have like exorbitant amounts for pain and suffering. So they said, okay, I think it was like $3,900 or 59, somewhere around
55,
there.
yeah.
55.
Yeah.
And that was the most you could claim for pain and suffering. There was a few others, but there were caps on saying, hey, we're not paying out these huge amounts, but you can go after for damages still.
Exactly. You still get your economic losses.
Right.
You're just not, there was a cap on that pain and suffering.
Okay. And then what happens in the next year here where it just shoots right through the roof?
So the next year, that is basically, there's been one full year of no fault. Most of ICBC's claims are still in the old system, but we have 1 year of no fault.
Okay, so from what I understand, there are still cases that are going through the courts here, and people are still being awarded, and ICBC still paying these things out. So they're paying these things out. It's almost like a 2-tier system for like old claims and new claims. And until all of those work themselves through the system, they're still paying out for a number of existing claims that were adjudicated or have yet to be adjudicated. And and once that happens, is that needle just gonna bury on the other side? Like what are we seeing here?
Well, if you believe what the NDP is saying, that they're gonna cut our car insurance premiums and it'll balance out somewhere. I don't know how much profit they want to have, but they'll decide how much profit they want to have, figure out how much they're paying out in claims, and set the premiums.
Is that ever how it works with government, though?
You think they might rob from the corporation again for?
I mean,
they've actually passed a law that says they can't.
Oh, they passed a law that they're not allowed to.
Yeah, that was one of the things that the NDP did, was that ICBC's profits have to stay in ICBC.
They have to stay in ICBC, and then but that's the extent of the law. So whatever they do with those profits is generally up to them. Now, how does that work as a crown corporation? So like the government controls it, but it's still a private corporation somehow. It's not. How does that
I'm
work?
not told. I know they have a board of directors. I'm not sure how the board of directors gets appointed or elected. I'm not totally in tune with the workings of ICBC.
With the inner workings of how the business and all that stuff works. But
basically the government underwrites the whole operation,
which I find fascinating. It's do we live in a private world, or it's a whole mess. It's
hard
a whole
to tell.
mess. But what's the argument for us to stay on a single crown corporation running the insurance scheme instead of having competition in the market? What's the argument there?
Well, it's a tough argument. One thing that ICBC can do, that if we had a private system, it wouldn't be the same. They could really focus on road safety and driver education. and really try and reduce the number of crashes that happen. Whereas, and that they could do that because they are a monopoly.
Yeah.
And they, as you see recently, they've got these astronomical profits. They could take some of those profits and focus it on that sort of public good. Whereas if we were in a private model, nobody's going to do that. The government will do it, but it's going to be taxpayer dollars. But there's not really a financial incentive for the government to do it because they don't have a monopoly on car insurance. So that's the one kind of pro of a government-run in auto insurance monopoly. But there's
Right.
cons too. Number one is competition breeds lower prices and more efficiency.
That's right.
Right.
And that's why I always advocate for competition in any marketplace.
Right. And
It breeds innovation as well. So I've heard of insurance schemes where they offer the insuree, the person who's being covered, how about this? You know, we'll give you a device you put in your car. It lets us know where you're going, how fast you're going, making sure that you're not speeding. It's an economic incentive for us to take less risk, and if you break these rules, then you're forking it out. But if you have this and you behave, then we're less likely to have to pay out. So it's risk mitigation in a competitive way. So these are innovations that I've seen throughout the world in different insurance markets. But when it comes to British Columbia, it's just that we've got a hammer and everything looks like a nail. And I find that the incentives are going the wrong way. If people are not at fault and they can't get sued and there's no economic and it's always an economic incentive. Everyone's got economic incentives. I mean, this is the beauty of studying economics is it shows where the moral hazard is. It allows you to realize that if you're telling people that ultimately you're never going to have to pay if you get in an accident and it's not going to cost you, and you'll be covered as well, and we probably pay for your car and the damages and all that, it's an incentive to drive terribly.
I mean, it's certainly an incentive not to care about it as much.
Yeah.
And the scheme you mentioned, I believe one insurance company in BC had that where they'd install an app or a device and your rates would be based on how good a driver you were. But with this new model, that is no longer of any use. Like, that insurance company can't offer insurance anymore because it's all no fault insurance. So there's no, basically what they did was they offered some personal liability insurance as a second option. So it used to be with ICBC, I think it still is, but you had to buy your basic insurance through them, and then you could buy top-up insurance through a third party.
Right.
So
like one of the brokerages that you would buy your insurance from. And they'd say, hey, would you like to have extra liability? We'll up you to like $3 million coverage. Would you like to get theft and fire and
collision insurance,
gas, or not gas, but glass insurance in case a seagull drops a shell on your window or something. It happens. We live in British Columbia. This stuff happens.
Yeah.
So, but they don't have that anymore. It's not even available. Or?
Well, I don't know if they do, but that was where that innovation was coming in. Was these third-party insurers were offering cheaper rates if you put the thing in your car.
Right.
And it seems like with this new model, that's not going to be available anymore. And you're absolutely right about the incentives. As if you're going to be compensated just as if you cause an accident and you're compensated the same as if you didn't cause an accident, we're not thinking about it every day. But when people hear this show, it's going to get into the subconscious that, hey, we don't really need to be as careful as we always were. Right? We have this.
It makes me scared though. It makes me scared because I have to be extra careful now because I have a family that I worry about. I'm not always the one in control. I'm not always the one driving. My wife drives the kids around, drives them to school and whatnot.
Yeah.
And that really makes me worry because other people are incentivized to drive so terribly that they're I can't
And
control that. It's way out of my control, and it makes it for a terrifying situation.
yeah, and it's not only that the incentive to drive well is lowered, but there's an incentive to drive more because your insurance doesn't cost as much. So you're going to have more drivers on the road, which is going to lead to more crashes, right? And it's really interesting to me as an economist that the NDP and the Green Party, and I don't really have a political horse,
Okay.
but it's interesting as an economist that the NDP and the Green Party, who purport to be environmentally savvy, want to bring in a system that will promote more driving.
Right. You think they would go the other way. Actually, it's the liberals that are going the
Yeah.
other way and trying to incentivize everyone to not own cars.
Yeah.
Just in general, by pricing them out of the market. One of the funny ones recently that I was talking with a mutual friend of ours, and it's they're making it expensive to buy cars, gas cars. They're making it more expensive, taxing them more, eventually weeding them out. But then all the electric cars are over $100,000, and they just introduced a new tax on cars that are luxuries. And it's like you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't when it comes to the government that we have currently,
Yeah.
whether it's federal or provincial. But that's neither here nor there. That's getting people out of cars entirely. But yeah, there's an
Yeah.
economic incentive to get in a car, drive it recklessly,
Yeah.
and just kind of hope for the best. Now, is there any plans? Like, do you know of anything with that they say that they're purporting to do with all this extra surplus that they're just not paying out in people's claims, and they want to fix the roads, they want to do something with it, or is it just like we don't know yet, we'll figure it out?
As far as I know, their plan is to reduce premiums. That's what they advertised when they were bringing this in to the people who were listening at the time. You got some checks over the past couple of years. If you owned a car, you got a check during COVID because nobody was driving, so you got a refund check on ICBC.
I got that. I
You
remember
got
that. Yeah.
There was a gas rebate check when I believe the war started, the Russia-Ukraine war. I think there was a gas rebate check around then.
Yeah, I think it was very small too, and it was just
Yeah,
kind of a
yeah, exactly.
oh,
But
thanks
but
for the
it's going to
$2
everybody with a
gas.
premium.
Yeah. Thanks for the $2.50
It
gas, and I have a half a tank now. Thanks, government. Appreciate it.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't do anything for anyone, but it costs the province a lot of money to do, and we all end up with poor insurance because of it.
Yeah, and I've always
And I only say that
seen these rebates as like not so much a cash cow, but like a wasteful way of doing anything. It'd be just easier to lower the rates or lower the taxes than give it back, because there's only administrative costs of figuring out who's eligible for it and sending it out. There's a lot of people involved in that process. It's not, and there's a lot of salaries to pay.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. There's an argument for giving it back because then the people who paid it during the time get it. But for the amount of money that it is, it would make more sense bureaucratically to reduce premiums and not give out rebates. But then you're not getting a check from the government right before you vote. So
Quebec knows all about that right now. So that, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but Legault is the premier over there. He promised up to $2,600 checks if he got voted in a week before the election. You know what? Landslide. He got in. Not a very popular guy, but he got in on a landslide.
Yeah.
He promised some money. That's exactly where it gets you. But so where do you see this moving forward with this? Because there are so many people that are not getting the service that they've been promised, right? So the whole idea of this is, okay, nobody's at fault. We're not gonna allow for people to sue. But what we're going to do is we're going to take care of all the people that are coming. Now, a cynic, like maybe myself, might say, well, you're saving all this money because you're actually not paying anybody what they deserve. So where are we on that front?
I think that's happening. I have some firsthand experience. I got into an accident. Somebody ran right into the side of me at the beginning of this year. So after the new scheme came into effect, and I missed maybe 40 hours of work over the first month following the accident. So I was talking to ICBC, and they told me that actually under the new scheme, we're not compensating you if you just miss a few hours here and there. So that was the first communication I got. And luckily for me, I'm in the industry. I've obviously known about the new scheme, and I've paid attention while it was going into a higher level than most people would.
Mm-hmm.
So I said to myself, I don't think that's right. So I wrote another email and I said, yeah, I don't think that's right. Maybe you could escalate this to a manager or something. So it turns out I got paid that 40 hours of work that I missed, but I don't know how many people didn't get paid that 40 hours, right?
Right. So their default is to say no, and then you have to fight for it. And you're all on your own. But what we learned from Wes was that they discourage you getting a lawyer or any of this stuff. It's just, no, fight it on your own. Most people don't know how to fight the system. This isn't
exactly
a thing. So as soon as you escalated, they're like, no, that's fine. Okay, we'll pay it.
Yeah, and it's not only not fighting it, but if my experience mirrored other people's, they directly told me that it wasn't compensatable under the new scheme. So, I mean, a lot of people are going to take that at face value.
Yeah. They would just say, okay, so it's not compensatable. End of story. There's nobody else to talk to. Normally, you would talk to a lawyer and you say, you're not paying up? Okay, well, here we go.
Exactly.
Now we all have to be super Karens and we have to speak to the manager. That's I guess the concept here. Now, what if you were to be denied even after that case? Like, what recourse would you have if you had to go after that?
I think there's something called a fairness commissioner, who you'd have to contact and put your case together for. I mean, we're talking hours of work, right? And I don't know how effective it is or what sort of how many cases get overturned, but I think that's kind of the next step. And maybe you can take it to civil resolution tribunal, but I'm not sure about that. But
all
then
of this
again,
stuff sounds so Orwellian to me because, like, I picture civil court, see a judge, but I'm hearing a tribunal. What was the name of the tribunal?
Civil resolution tribunal, I think, and basically it's government employees acting as judges.
Government employees acting as judges. And what was the name of the person before that? The step before that? These names.
The fairness commissioner.
Fairness commissioner. I mean, like, that sounds like something from
1984.
It sounds like something from a movie. Like, he would come in with tall boots and a cape. Like, that's the kind of image I'm getting. Like, what are these people? Why are they paid by our government? And why is it that that's the resource? This is the direction that we're going with this, instead of, like, where is the third party in this whole concept? Everything essentially is employed people with the incentive. Obviously, I mean, the obvious incentive here is to say no, to just say no to your claim.
And I mean, basically what's happened is they've created a WorkSafe for automobiles. So if any of your listeners have had to deal with WorkSafe, basically it's a very parallel system that's been created for car accident injuries.
Right. Well, I've had to deal with WorkSafe, not making claims, but I've had to deal with WorkSafe where you got to get stitches and you'll be okay. And he was like, it's not going to stop bleeding. Can you just stitch me up? I'm a mechanic, by the way. This is what I do for a living. I wrench on these cars that are crashing and doing all this stuff on the road.
Yeah.
I'm the one who's trying to make sure they don't crash. But I can't control all of it. But I do what I can on the safety end. But I've dealt with WorkSafe BC, and I know they want to get involved in this big, long bureaucratic process anytime anything happens at work. And there's been times where I just say like, oh no, I was fixing the washing machine at home, and I caught myself doing that just to save
You don't
myself
want the
the
headache, right?
hassle, right? I don't want to.
Yeah.
And then you get all these calls. I've done it before, right? And then they contact your employer, and then your employer has a bunch of paperwork to do, and it creates a whole headache. It's a whole like it. Don't get me wrong. If you really hurt yourself, people out there, make sure you fill it out. It's important that you do, but like scrapes and bruises, they'll go overboard on this stuff because bureaucracy is going to do what a bureaucracy does. It just you just input in, output out, right? That's the way the system works, and that's the way it goes. But so we're in this system where we have the fairness commissioner. I can't get over this. It just sounds so comical to me. We got fairness commissioners, and if the fairness commissioner is no good for you, then you go to your next step, and that's this tribunal, which is a kangaroo court of employees acting as judges. Now, what if that fails you? Do you have an ultimate, like, can you go to the actual civil court, have an actual judge rule on any cases, or what? Where are we on this?
No, I just wanted to clarify that I'm not a lawyer, so all of this is just my understanding.
Right.
Okay.
Fair.
But again, it's my understanding that you can only go get a lawyer and go to court under a very few set of circumstances, and those are if the person who hit you was at fault and was criminally charged.
Right. So it's no longer covered under the no-fault insurance scheme if the person did something criminal in the action.
Right.
So like criminal negligence.
And gets convicted.
Oh, okay. So you have to have a conviction. So first and foremost, they're in jail, so it's kind of hard to sue them. So, like,
and you got to wait for them to be convicted before you can sue,
which can take a long time. So that might be years, and you're just out. You're just out. Now, I've heard stories about people who are out of pocket paying just to get the stuff that they're getting, and then they're having a hard time fighting with these adjudicators, or what are these fairness commissioners? I'm sorry, they just cracked me up so much. But these fairness commissioners are dragging their heels, dragging their feet, and not getting people paid. People who are just, I need it now. I got a broken leg. I've got, whatever. I need physiotherapy. I really need to get back up and going. Also, people with pain and suffering, and they're just being, nope, sorry.
Yeah, it's my understanding that pain and suffering is off the table. Again, I've gone to physiotherapy, and I'm lucky. I'm in a financial position where I can eat some of the costs, but none of my treatments are covered in full. They all have an ICBC rate, and I'm left paying $10 or $35 or $50 to make up the difference each time. And I'm lucky because they've approved my treatments, but I'm sure there's people out there who are having to go through treatments that aren't approved and be out of pocket the whole amount. That doesn't seem far-fetched to me at all. And for the people who can't do it, they can't get better, right?
Yeah.
So you're creating this disincentive to heal.
Yeah, and a big economic drag on the healthcare system, because injuries that don't get taken care of, they turn into much bigger problems down the line, and that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, and if you don't get better, you don't go back to work. So I mean, it's a huge trickle down effect.
Now, I've had the experience, not with insurance, but in the case where, like, I had to go get physiotherapy for, situations, like, because I did a lot of sports, I did a lot of snowboarding and stuff like that when I was younger. It leads to sore muscles, and you need to get some bones cracked and whatnot, right? So, and take care of this stuff while you can. I have benefits through my work, so I can go see a physiotherapist, but like, these insurance schemes, they don't tend to cover the time off it takes, because the physiotherapist isn't always open when you're available. You have to take the time to go. Now, how does ICBC the no fault insurance scheme work for those cases? Because typically, if you sued, you would be able to get lost compensation, like wage compensation for lost time if you had to go see physiotherapy. How does it work in this
Yep.
system?
I can't give you a strong answer on that. My gut tells me that that's what they were telling me when they said that you can't, if you miss work here and there, we're not going to compensate you for it. I think that might have been the real meaning of that, was that they wouldn't compensate if you missed once every 2 weeks to go to physio.
Right.
But I mean, it's a real cost to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I haven't quite got that far in my claim to give you a firsthand answer, and I don't know the actual policy.
Okay, that's absolutely fair. But my assessment was about the same. That was my gut feeling anyway going
Yeah.
into this. But yeah, lots of people being hurt. Now, wider economic situations here, the idea of people losing work over a long time, that's really devastating. Now, you have a couple other figures here that you wanted to show today.
Yeah, actually just the one. So I think we only want to show the one that's called the unpaid claims. So this is kind of a bit of a conspiracy graph, if you
Okay.
will. So you remember back to the net income graph, where they were making some money, then they were losing some money, then they were losing a lot of money, and then they went back to making money.
Right, and that's this graph here, the one
That's
where,
this graph here. Yeah.
for anyone who's just tuning in
So
right now, this is
yeah,
back to 2010 all the way.
yeah,
Where ICBC was actually making money on the old tort system, and then still on the old tort system, they had some negative months or negative years, sorry, and then
yeah,
the NDP came in right about here, and then there was a few more really bad ones but then it started bouncing back up here, despite the fact it was still tort system, not this new no fault insurance. Now we're getting to the other graph here.
So this graph is called their provision for unpaid claims, and this is basically claims that are in the past but haven't been taken off of ICBC's books yet.
Say that in more digestible terms.
Yeah. Okay. So this is all the people who've been in a car accident as of the date,
Yeah.
but who haven't gotten paid.
Oh, okay. So
Okay.
just
So
just still holding on to it, hoping to get some sort of finalization or final decision on their case.
right, and ICBC put some money away for that, basically.
Oh, okay. Right. Fair enough.
Okay. But they call the change in unpaid claims, it affects their net income. So as you can see, as we go up the graph, the unpaid claims are getting bigger.
Right. Year after
And
year from 2010.
yeah, and right when we hit the big losses in 1819, the provision for unpaid claims is at its largest, or the change. This is change in billions of dollars.
In billions. So this is $2.39 billion
Yeah, increase
increase over
in that
the
year.
year before.
Right. And then the next year, another $1.71 billion increase. So how they come up with this number is they do an actuarial calculation based on assumptions they make, and then it affects their net income. So if you want to get into the conspiracy side of things,
Okay.
were the assumptions correct? Or were the assumptions made to give the appearance of a big loss, right? And then as soon as they announced no fault insurance coming into effect, which was in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
the next annual statement showed this unpaid claims, all of a sudden it's actually decreasing.
Right. But that didn't
And then
actually
the next,
happen, because we saw in the other graph that didn't happen.
well, no, it so because it decreases now, there's more net income because
Right. I'm
ICBC has
following you.
created this fictional income, right?
Right.
And then again, the next year it went up $1.81 billion with basically no or very little no fault insurance. Well, no fault insurance didn't have a big impact on that.
Right.
So it makes you wonder, what assumptions were they using? Were they just creating a situation where it looked like there was a loss to forward a political objective? Or was there another one? Is the cap came into effect, the small cap. So maybe the small cap made a huge difference,
Right.
right? I know at the time when it was a dumpster fire, and Carol James said something to the effect of, "We're being very careful. We're putting more money away just in case." So that more money that they're putting away is reflected in here, which drives the big losses. So
Right. So in
for the
all those
people who
years
were,
moving forward, they were putting more and more away just in case, making it look like
yeah,
there's an increase in losses. And then
right.
these years here, this is just a decrease in the increase of losses, right?
Yeah. So we're clawing back, but
But we're
yeah.
still at a net loss.
Well, now we're at those 2 years of big gains.
Oh, okay. So it reflects here,
Yeah.
but it's not to do
Yeah.
with the thing that they're saying it has to do with. So it's
Certainly not entirely.
well, isn't that just a political game at this point? This is what politicians
Yeah.
are good for, taking credit of the good times and blaming the bad times on the other guy, right? That's always or the other system. And
right.
well, the NDP's they're famous for bringing ICBC to the province in the first place. That's their big claim to fame. Anything that's a big government project, let's nationalize whatever. They're the Bernie Sanderses of Canada, essentially. I don't know if they're instrumental in the BC ferries, but we all know how well that runs. The ferry system that has to advertise at GM Place every year, because I mean their slogan might as well be because you don't have a choice. But
yeah, right. It's a head scratcher why they're on that clock.
Right, they're advertising. They spend a lot of money on that. It's they could just lower the fares. I mean, most people, or maybe have more sailings. This is for anyone who lives in BC's, especially Lower Mainland or the island, you'll understand the absolute horror of getting on the ferries, which is funny. So I lived in Japan for some time, and my wife and I, we went to use their ferry system because we had to take a ferry, and over there they had like a bunch of different options. You could go anything from like cattle car ferry, which is what we took because we were young and we were just trying to travel and have fun. It stunk like manure the whole way, but whatever. But it was cheap as chips, right? It was super cheap. Take the ferry. But then they had middle of the run, coach or whatever you would call it, all the way up to such a luxurious one where you drive in with your car, it sucks all the exhaust fumes out, and you're in the room with your car.
Oh wow!
And they had service and the whole right? And this is why I advocate for competition in any market, because I see that when there's a market for something, somebody will provide it. If it's too luxurious and dumb like that, nobody buys it. Obviously, it's wasted money. But it's up to entrepreneurs and it's up to consumers to make those choices, not some all-seeing magical superpower central authority. And we know that, well, there's a lot of history of those not working out. But yeah, so what do you think is the best move moving forward? Now, I've been trying to help along with this fight and just spread awareness, let people know that this is what's going on. But is there an active anybody trying to push this forward in any sort of real, meaningful way to get rid of this scheme?
I'm not sure that I've heard of it at this point. I know the trial lawyers are giving a legal challenge to it, or at least they were. I don't know if they are. I heard Wes say that case is maybe rocky. But hopefully they take that to the top courts and see what they say. As far as us, I mean, ICBC is still selling us third-party liability, and giving us the option to go up to $3 million.
Does that mean anything though if we're not in a tort system?
I've gone to the minimum. I know if you drive out of the province, you could get sued. So there'd be
Oh,
a
okay.
reason.
Or if you
to carry it
drive
there.
into the United States or something like that.
Yeah, or Alberta.
Yeah.
Also, if you run through a store, they can still sue you.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, that's something that you can be sued over. But so if you run into a mannequin, you can be sued. But if you run into a real person, can't be sued.
That's hideous. That's hideous.
Right?
Yeah. No, I
Isn't
get
it
the
bad?
analogy. So, like,
Yeah.
so if you accidentally hit the gas instead of the brake as you're pulling into your fashion department store, whatever,
Yeah.
store, retail outlet,
Yeah.
or whatever, and you crash into there, they can sue you, and they can sue you through
Yeah.
ICBC and sue the coverage there.
Right.
And that's not criminal negligence. That's just it was an accident, a legitimate one,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
where I again, you're not a lawyer, so it's kind of like where do they get that concept from?
It's baffling.
Now, would it be so? Okay, here's a good question then, because I've heard stories. I don't know what your situation was with you. You said you just got hit. Were you in a vehicle?
Yeah, I was driving down the road and somebody couldn't stop at the try and turn my light back on here.
Uh-oh.
Somebody couldn't stop at the stop sign because of ice and ran into me.
Oh, okay. But like, what
Yeah.
if somebody ran over the sidewalk and into your yard and blasted through your fence? Would that be the same thing
No,
as a storefront?
I don't think so. I think you have to lose business income. That's the only thing they can sue you, that you can be sued over.
Wow. So even if
Yeah.
someone runs the sidewalk and goes on to something that's not city property, it still falls under ICBC's no fault scheme.
I think so. I don't know how it would work. Not a lawyer, but my understanding is that the third party's only purpose is for leaving the province or for that loss of business interruption.
That's just and it's supposed to be oh man, I can't get over this. I can't get over how people are not just like calling up their MPs and shouting people down over this, because it's just absurd. It's absolutely
It is
absurd.
absurd.
And I get
the trouble.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think the trouble is that until you're affected, it doesn't matter, right?
It shouldn't come to that, and I understand, and it really sucks that people are going through this now, and this is a reality of the situation. Like maybe we're having jokes about the names of these representatives and stuff like that, because it's comical and it's funny.
It's serious.
But at the same time, when somebody actually does get injured, this is their livelihood. Now we were told by Wes that when people say, for example, don't work, like a housewife, for example, doesn't work, or a student, someone who's going to college, they don't look at the potential. They don't look at pain and suffering or any of these things. They just have a set number. And then there's a cap on that as well. Like you could be a hockey player making like ridiculous amounts of money. And there's a cap at what, 90 some odd $1,000.
Yeah, about 90. And if you're not working at the time, they have they're not transparent with this, as far as I know, but they have a formula that will tell you how much wage loss you're entitled to as a student, rather than looking at the real live data that people go to school, they make money.
Yeah. They make school so that they can in the future make money, but that's not factored in their equations for having to pay people out in this whole scheme. I was laughing and now I'm sad. I'm sad because of this
Yeah, I know
situation, and it really hurts. But I don't know what to say further from that. I want to say thank you for joining on the show tonight, and I really wanted to really appreciate you coming out and speaking out about this, especially from a professional point of view, someone who's an economist in the trade who deals with this so intimately.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I want people to know about this. I'm sorry that I brought you down, and
No, cheer up.
The topic that brings you down, that brings
Yeah.
people down, but
no, but I think it's important
to
that people get this information, because maybe some phone calls need to be made, maybe some emails need to be sent, letters written, and stamps licked. Send it on the way.
Absolutely.
Because we need to get out of this kind of situation. Is there anywhere I can send people to look at some of your work?
I think the Georgia Straight has an article up on that I wrote about this.
Okay.
And then
I put the link to the other article, the one where with your old photograph, and that one's a great one.
Yeah. Is that
that's you without the beard and hair?
Yeah.
But this one is from this is the Georgia Straight. Yeah, straight.com.
Yeah.
And this was a really interesting read.
It kind of goes more in depth on some of the minutia.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I have that in the description down below, and
then I think I sent you another link that went to a letter I wrote to or I sent to all the MLAs before before the vote. But if anybody wants to borrow stuff from that, they're welcome to use it to send to their MLA or.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or use it in a phone call to their MLA.
I'll put that down in the description down below so people can get into that. But yeah, I want to thank you for coming out, Nick, and it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Really nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Okay. I want to thank you guys for coming out as well. You guys have been really good showing up on these impromptu live streams. It looks like a lot of the notifications are making it out. And look at the timing. The kids coming in the room and joining here. Daniel, little man, we're going to make sure he's safe. We're not going to go with that no-fault insurance. Well, we have no choice. So I'm going to have to just limit my time on the roads here in British Columbia because we're not covered, it seems. That is the way it's going right now. Unfortunately, I'm going to write a letter, actually, honestly. But I want to thank you guys for coming out, and we'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.